Sup, you beautiful bastard! Hope you had a fantastic Wednesday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. And a quick note before we get started. Today's Philip DeFranco Show, just like we had to do yesterday, is in two parts. This is part two. After you watch this, I definitely recommend you watch part one. We always end up having to split shows when we cover some of the heavier topics. It gets suppressed by YouTube, so there is that. But with that said, welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today in What Is Happening news, let's talk about Jake Paul. So, Jake's been in the news for a number of not so great reasons recently. Right back in June, we saw Jake Paul being charged after that Scottsdale, Arizona looting incident. Then, of course, more recently, he's come under fire for throwing these pandemic parties. Ton of people seemingly following no social distancing or mask guidelines, just partying, who cares? A situation that was so selfish, irresponsible, and ridiculous, even the Calabasas mayor had to get involved. But the big news today did not see this coming. There was an FBI raid on Jake Paul's Calabasas home. Now, as of recording this video, we do not know why the authorities searched the home, what they were looking for, if they found anything. Though, based on the video, it seems to be somewhat serious. You got TMZ posting footage of what appears to be federal agents leaving in these decked out vehicles. Reports that at least 20 people were on the ground executing this warrant. According to ABC7, the FBI gave them a statement saying, the affidavit in support of the search warrant is sealed and we are therefore prohibited from commenting as to the nature of the investigation. But with them reportedly adding that no arrests were planned. But yeah, ultimately, that is where we are with the situation. We're going to keep our eyes on it. It's very odd. Right, what exactly is happening with Jake Paul and or the people around him that would warrant an FBI raid? And actually, on that note, like I said, this is a developing situation. Right before we were finishing up this video, you had ABC7 posting video and reporting. Air 7 HD was over the scene as what appeared to be multiple firearms scattered across the property, including a long gun propped up against a hot tub in the backyard, were being seized by authorities.
They have a lot of weapons.
With TMZ also issuing an updated report that there was another raid in Las Vegas. This at Graffiti Mansion, which they said is owned by an associate of Jake's. With TMZ also claiming that the FBI told them the FBI is investigating allegations of criminal acts surrounding the incident at Scottsdale Fashion Square in May 2020. But yeah, with this story, with what we know now, of course, I would love to know your thoughts in those comments down below. And then let's talk about this potentially industry-changing news around Disney and Mulan. For a while we've seen these reports of will they or won't they regarding a theatrical release. This, of course, because in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, one of the areas affected have been theaters, many shut down. Though, of course, that situation differs whether we're talking about the United States or other places internationally. And for a while we saw Disney really stressing that they wanted a theatrical release, pushing the release date back again and again. We've also seen this idea floated of does Mulan get released digitally? We saw Trolls 2 released that way, seemingly with success. Though one of the biggest differences there is Trolls 2 had a budget of $90 to $100 million. When you're talking about Mulan, just the production budget was $200 million. But finally, we have an answer. Mulan will be released digitally. And as far as the specifics, it will be released to Disney Plus customers in certain countries, including the United States, who will then purchase it for $29.99. The release will start on September 4th, and my question to you is, does this sound reasonable? And I'm really fascinated by the situation because the industry could view this as an even bigger test than what we saw with Trolls 2. Right, when Trolls 2 was initially released, you had that 48-hour rental, it was $19.99, it was in pretty much all the places you would expect. But with Disney's release here, there is a staggering difference. One, you have a difference in price, right? $29.99, effectively $30. Though I guess the real number is closer to $37 because a Disney Plus subscription is $6.99 a month, right? So there's an argument to be made that this is a prohibitive price. Maybe it leads to fewer people buying it, more people pirating it. But at the same time for Disney, there is potential long-term gain here. Let's say through this, they get 1 million people to sign up to Disney Plus. The average retention rate is 1 year. If that were to become a reality, you're talking about $84 million in subscription fees. And that's on top of the $30 million you would make off those 1 million new customers. And that doesn't even consider how many people from the existing Disney Plus subscriber base would buy this movie. Though, to be fair here, I'm pulling out that 1 million new subscriber number pretty much out of nowhere. Which is why I will pass the question off to you here. Will you be paying this? Do you see it as a reasonable value? I've seen some people argue, if you have like a family of 4, you go to the theater. Hey, people saying you compare those numbers, it instantly becomes reasonable. Though I also think that kind of thinking doesn't take into account the economic hardship that a lot of Americans are realizing right now. Yeah, let me know what you're thinking and why in those comments down below. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today. And today in Awesome, brought to you by Movement. I get compliments and questions about the watches that I sometimes wear on this show. And so with that, now is the perfect time to tell you about Movement's 7th anniversary that's going on now until August 10th. If you didn't didn't know, Movement has tons of super stylish watches, sunglasses, rings, bracelets, and so much more. Personally, right now, this bad boy's my favorite. It's from their Element collection. It's a 43mm in ash black. And, Movement products have a clean and minimal design because they're all about simple style and functionality, all at an affordable price. They've also sold over 2 million watches in over 160 countries, and with free shipping and free returns worldwide, you can just try these products out risk-free. And best of all, right now, Movement is offering a 27% off discount site-wide until August 10th. So just head on over to movement.cc/DeFranco, use code LUCKY7, or just click my link down below. And also, if by the time you see this, the sale ended, no worries, just use my link down below for 15% off and free shipping anytime. But yeah, main point, go check it out and enjoy. And the first bit of awesome today is we had the fantastic Pentatonix playing a game of Song Association. Then we got the trailer for The Sleepover. First We Feast gave us an episode of Coneheads. We had a Simpsons expert breaking down every job Homer's ever had. Dude Perfect gave us impossible ping pong trick shots. And the final bit of awesome, and maybe it's too early to recommend it because I've only played it for 30 minutes. Today, the game Fall Guys came out on PC and PS4. So far, I would describe it as incredibly fun and at times frustrating, but still fun when it's frustrating. And what's actually pretty cool is if you have PlayStation Plus, it is free right now. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And the last thing that I want to talk about today is not a sexy story, but it is a massively important story. So here's what's happening. Late Monday night, the Census Bureau releases a statement announcing that they will end all counting efforts on September 30th, which is notably a month early. With the agency saying on that date, not only will they be ending all field data collection, right, like door knocking, but they will also stop collecting responses by phone, mail, and online. This is an absolutely massive deal. Right, if you're not aware, the results from this national population count are the only determining factors for two crucial things. One, how congressional seats are allocated and how congressional districts are determined. And two, it decides how trillions of dollars in federal aid is given to states for everything from infrastructure, roads and bridges, to schools and healthcare. And understand, this isn't a situation where it's like, oh, we'll get them next year. This only happens every 10 years. It sets both of those things that I just talked about in stone for the next decade. And not only is the 2020 census the largest and most complicated count in American history, it also obviously comes during a pandemic. Right? And the way the census works is that the Bureau first asks people to respond themselves through mail, phone, or online. This is called self-response. And following that, the agency then goes door to door to households that did not respond. Right? And this year, it's been messy. The in-person counting process was delayed because of the pandemic. So because of those delays, earlier this year, the Bureau extended door-to-door efforts to go to the end of October instead of the original date, which was set in July. And as a result, those in-person interviews didn't start until last month in certain parts of the United States and aren't even set to be expanded to the rest of the country until next week. Now, in this mess, we're getting the news that in-person counting is being cut short. But what we also saw is that while the counting deadline was pushed, the deadline for turning in the data that says how congressional seats will be reallocated was not, with federal law saying that the Census Bureau has to send population totals to the president by December 31st of every census year. But because the in-person counting itself was delayed, experts and current top Census Bureau officials have been saying for months now that the December deadline is impossible. This including Tim Olson, the census official leading field operations for the count, saying all the way back in May, we have passed the point where we could even meet the current legislative requirement of December 31st. We can't do that anymore. Now, the Census Bureau, for their part, did try to have that date pushed. Around the same time the agency delayed the counting deadline, they also asked Congress to push the December data deadline to April 2021. Right, it's a federal law. The Bureau can't just change it itself. Congress has to approve it. And while we saw the Democrat-controlled House approving that ask in their $3 trillion coronavirus stimulus bill that they passed back in May, the Senate's proposal, which of course hasn't even been passed yet, also doesn't include the extension. And when the idea was first floated, Trump himself even publicly said that he supported extending the deadline to April 2021. But it seems like that has now changed because census workers have said that the White House and the Commerce Department have been pushing for the Bureau to speed up the process. And specifically, in their Monday statement, the Census Bureau specifically said that it was cutting the count short and making these changes to meet the December 31st deadline outlined by the administration. And so now we have this situation where the Bureau will have just under 2 months to try to rush to count all of these unresponsive households for a deadline that many say is already unrealistic. And that is incredibly significant because the already delayed and now shortened door-to-door outreach is starting at a time with the lowest self-response rate in history. In fact, according to reports, around 40%, right, 4 out of every 10 households in the United States have still not been counted. And so that's why you have so many experts incredibly worried that tons of people will be undercounted and that this absolutely essential data will be skewed. That concern echoed by 4 former census directors in a congressional hearing last week. There you had Kenneth Pruitt, who was director from 1998 to 2001, telling Congress, the chances of having a census accurate enough to use is unclear, very, very much unclear. The former director is also warning Congress that the lack of adequate time to follow up in person with households that haven't responded and to go to communities that are traditionally hard to contact will result in many people not being counted. And because of that, federal aid for those communities will be lowered and the political representation will be lessened. That's even more concerning because the communities that are more likely to be counted during those in-person in-person interviews are those who have been hit hardest by the pandemic, right? Historically, people of color, immigrants, low-income households, people experiencing homelessness, college students, and elderly people in assisted living facilities are less likely to fill out a census form on their own. With reports noting not only are these groups at high risk for infection, they're also among the most in need of in-person outreach. Right, and so with this, we've seen a lot of people slamming Trump and the administration, accusing him of doing this to deliberately hurt those groups for political gain. This including the likes of Senator Brian Schatz, who said in a statement, "This is another deliberate attempt to undercount communities of color, immigrants, Native Americans, and other hard-to-reach groups. It is clear that the Trump administration doesn't want an accurate and full count. They want to deprive these communities of both political power and federal dollars for partisan gain." This also echoed in an op-ed written by Representative Karen Bass and Stacey Abrams, where they argued that under Trump's scheme, congressional districts will become whiter and more Republican despite population trends that run the exact opposite direction. Adding, the Electoral College will be further weighted against the will of the people. District maps from the state house to the school board will be inaccurate, silencing entire communities from being seen and heard. Right, and this idea that undercounting these groups will help the Republicans, that's something we saw Julie Menin, the census director for New York City, arguing with her, saying, "This is a whole systemic attack on the census for political gain. There is an intentional attempt here to basically steal the census, to politicize this census to gain Republican seats across the country." Right, so you have all of that, but cutting the count short isn't even the only thing the Trump administration has done in recent weeks that critics say will skew the census data, hurt minority groups, and potentially help Republicans. Right, just 2 weeks ago, Trump issued a presidential memorandum telling the Census Bureau to calculate the number of congressional seats each state gets without including undocumented immigrants in the population count. Now, that memo is already the subject of numerous lawsuits. It's also widely viewed by legal scholars as unconstitutional, but some experts have said that even if this order is not upheld, it could still impact representation because those communities will be worried that their answers will be used against them and will not respond. Right, which is why you've seen a number of experts saying essentially for Trump, no matter what happens, it should be a win-win. Right, this because no matter the scale, as long as it is somewhat effective, studies have shown that not counting undocumented immigrants could help Republicans. In fact, according to the University of Virginia Center for Politics, excluding undocumented immigrants from the census would mean that California would actually lose 2 House seats. New Jersey would also lose a seat. On the other side of things, you'd have Texas, instead of gaining 3 seats, would only gain 2. Though at the same time, Alabama and Ohio would both gain a seat, despite the fact that they are currently not expected to gain seats under a conventional count. And as it turns out, Trump's order is actually relevant to the Census Bureau cutting the counting short. Right? With all this, you have a lot of people saying that the order to exclude undocumented immigrants explains why the administration all of a sudden wants to speed up the census. According to legal experts, if the order is to have any chance of succeeding, the census totals for redistricting need to be delivered to Trump while he is still in office, which he almost certainly will be on December 21st, but potentially might not be by April 2021. On the other end of this, we have seen some Republicans supporting Trump's efforts to prevent undocumented immigrants from being counted in the census. This, including some politicians from states that could lose seats from the move, like Senator Marco Rubio, who said last week, it's sort of a catch-22 because it would hurt Florida, but at the same time, it dilutes the representation of people that are here legally and eligible to vote. And as far as the decision to cut the count short, in the announcement Monday, we saw Census Bureau Director Stephen Dillingham defending the move, saying the Bureau is committed to a complete and accurate 2020 census and adding, building on our successful and innovative internet response option, the dedicated women and men of the Census Bureau, including our temporary workforce deploying in communities across the country in upcoming weeks, will work diligently to achieve an accurate account. And that is ultimately where we are right now. I know there are a number of things here. With what we're talking about, there are concerns about general representation, minority representation, undocumented representation. These are connected, but also understandably different. And so with this, I would love to know your thoughts about this as a whole or regarding these specific avenues. And if there is a final note that I can hit on, if you want to be counted, if you want the people around you to be counted, go to my2020census.gov. Get counted today. You can't be properly represented if you aren't seen. I know me ending on this is essentially like me yelling at you to eat your vegetables, but eat them. And that is where I'm going to end today's show. As always, if you're one of the last 3 still here, thanks for being a part of this show. Also, if one of you are new here, definitely hit that subscribe button, tap that bell to turn on notifications. Also, if you're looking for more to watch, if you haven't seen part 1 of today's Philip DeFranco show, or you just missed yesterday's show, you can click or tap right there to watch either of those right now. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.